what's up? Sanisa, Super Bad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. I'm sure most of you have heard by now. Charlo versus Jaime Munguia talks collapsed due to fight over U.S. broadcast rights. Showtime, one of PBC's broadcast partners, along with Fox, was set to televise the 160-pound title fight on pay-per-view, sources said. However, Golden Boy insisted that its partner DAZN be involved with the stateside telecast. PBC offered Golden Boy the TV rights in Mexico and the UK, where DAZN is popular. However, Golden Boy officials didn't respond by a noon Pacific time deadline Friday to close the deal, sources said. The proposed deal included a rematch clause, per sources, that guaranteed Charlo the option to secure an immediate return bout if he lost. DAZN would own the sole broadcast rights to the Charlo vs. Munguia 2 rematch, sources said. Finalizing Charlo vs. Munguia is top priority, De La Hoya said on Twitter. Golden Boy remains committed to our partner DAZN. DAZN understands the magnitude of this fight and is willing and able to collaborate with Showtime to get this done. I hope Showtime is on board. With the talks broken off, the WBC has ordered a Tuesday purse bid for a middleweight title eliminator between Munguia and Carlos Adames, who is with the PBC, sources said. If Munguia wins, he'll become the official mandatory challenger to Charlo. Ostensibly, the rights to Charlo vs. Munguia could be auctioned off later on this year.
It was too good to be true.
In the interim, Charlo will fight someone else this summer on Showtime, sources said. His fifth consecutive fight on the platform. It's rare for championship-level boxers to compete on different platforms, but it does happen occasionally. PBC's Sean Porter challenged Terence Crawford for a welterweight title on ESPN Plus pay-per-view in November. In June of 2019, PBC's Andy Ruiz challenged Anthony Joshua for the heavyweight title on DAZN, and after scoring the upset victory, defended that title on DAZN in December of 2019. In this instance, PBC has the champion and wanted the fight on Showtime pay-per-view.
Seemed too good to be true to begin with.
That Showtime could get a fight like this over the line, foot the bill, and not bill it as a pay-per-view. Initially, that's what was being reported by Keith Idek. He stated that this wasn't going to be a pay-per-view. It turns out that's not the case. Showtime had every intention of billing this as a pay-per-view. You can make of that what you will.
Whether or not this is the kind of fight you'd pay for.
If you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, I'd actually foot the bill for this fight. I'd cough up the scratch, cough up the cash to see a Golden Boy Promotions fighter take on a PBC fighter, PBC champion in Charlo.
I'd pay for it, though I'd understand if some of you might not.
Because you get the same or better fights than this one free of charge on Top Rank and ESPN. A fight like Shakur Stevenson versus Oscar Valdez, a fight between two unbeaten two-division champions that doesn't come
with a hefty pay-per-view price tag, might make this fight a tough sell.
Showtime's Stefan Espinoza stated, simple, fair solution. As the champion and the side initiating the deal and paying for the fight, the Charlo Tom Brown Promotions side of things chooses the network for the first fight. If Munguia wins, then Golden Boy and Munguia controls the rematch and can take it to DAZN or whatever other network they choose.
I don't often agree with things Stefan Espinoza says, but I think that's a fair solution.
Charlo is the reigning champion after all, and he, unlike Jaime Munguia, he has been on pay-per-view at least once before. That's more times than Jaime Munguia has been on pay-per-view, whether it underperformed or not.
Golden Boy shouldn't let the U.S. rights to this fight get in the way of it.
Because they're not the ones that initiated the deal, and their fighter isn't the reigning champion. Charlo is. Oscar De La Hoya himself stated, finalizing Charlo versus Munguia is top priority. Golden Boy remains committed to our partner DAZN, understands the magnitude of this fight, and is willing and able to collaborate with Show Sports to get this done. I hope Showtime is on board.
I think Stefan Espinoza's proposition makes the most sense.
Charlo is the reigning champion, and it's his side of things that seems to have initiated this deal, so Jaime Munguia just needs to play ball, because at the end of the day, it's not like he has all that many options to begin with. It's not like he has the option of facing Gennady Golovkin, for example, because if Gennady beats Ryota Murata, he's going to move straight into a Canelo Alvarez trilogy, a third fight with him. You don't fight Charlo, who do you fight? You already walked away from Yanni Beck.
The WBO themselves say they've moved on from that.
And you don't have the option of challenging Demetrius Andrade for his WBO title, because Demetrius very recently signed the contract for the Zach Parker fight. So if you don't fight Charlo for his belt, Who do you fight? The saving grace is that Fernando Beltran posted this via his social media, and it reads, Fernando Beltran, the president of Zanfer Promotions, who co-promotes Jaime Munguia alongside Golden Boy Promotions, and he says nothing is canceled. This fight with Jermall Charlo, he says they're still in negotiations. Is it possible they could still get this fight over the line in the 13th hour? Well, I certainly hope so, because neither Jaime Munguia or Jermall Charlo have that many options. Gennady Golovkin's not going to end up fighting either of them if he beats Ryota Murata. He's supposed to move straight into a trilogy with Canelo. Demetrius Andrade is set to move up in weight. These two boys need each other. According to Fernando Beltran, negotiations are still underway. It's not over. Relevant questions in association with all of this. If Golden Boy Promotions insists on involving DAZN, has DAZN actually presented a counter-offer for a greater financial value than Showtime's offer to do the fight? You can't accuse either of the fighters of ducking because both guys agreed to terms. That's what the reports seem to indicate, that the Jaime Munguia people, they're on board, and so are the Charlo people. It's the powers that be, the platforms themselves, that can't settle their differences. Though outside looking in, Jermall Charlo's the champion. He's been on pay-per-view before, and it seems that it's Showtime that initiated this set of negotiations. So Oscar De La Hoya and the people at Golden Boy Promotions, they don't need to fret about getting DAZN involved. Worrying about the U.S. broadcast rights. DAZN already caters to 200-plus territories around the world. If the difference between getting this fight done and not getting this fight done is acquiescing to giving Showtime the U.S. broadcast rights for this fight, that's what they should do, because if they don't do it, what else have they got lined up for Jaime? And I know you can ask the same of Jermall Charlo, but he's the champion. Just feels like a very inopportune time to go worrying about whether or not DAZN is involved, because you didn't want to do a Demetrius Andrade fight for Jaime Munguia, and that's a fight that you could have did on your side of things without worrying about Showtime or the PBC, and you didn't do that. If they would have done an Andrade fight when they had the chance, platforms wouldn't be an issue. You wouldn't have had to worry about broadcast rights if you placed more emphasis on that fight, but you didn't. You had an opportunity to put Jaime Munguia in a title fight on your side of things, and you didn't do that. So at this point, is it too late to save this thing? Fernando Beltran says it isn't, but we'll see. In other news, Dimitri Bivol is confident of victory, aims to showcase skills against Canelo. Dimitri Bivol, a very talented boxer, is confident in his ability to overcome the man that many regard as the best pound-for-pound fighter in the sport. I believe in my skills, and when I come to the ring, I believe in my victory. I'm looking forward to May 7th. Thank you. Me and my team wanted this fight, and I'm glad this fight will be in the United States and one of the meccas of boxing. This is also very exciting, and it means a lot to me. Even with Dimitri Bivol being an unbeaten light heavyweight in his prime, confident in his abilities, confident in his skills, you're still going to find people out there that try to poo-poo all over this fight. Those in the minority. And I say minority because the majority of the time, Canelo Alvarez does better numbers than everybody. That's why he's such a hot commodity. He outsells Gervonta Davis easy. Charlo brothers, he brought in more pay-per-view buys with Caleb Plant from Tennessee than both Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury did with their third fight. He outsold them and he outsold Spence. And he pretty much has outperformed the entire PBC roster with Lowell Caleb Plant. Lowell Caleb Plant on pay-per-view in his last pay-per-view outing. Caleb Plant, who's never even been on pay-per-view. The driving force for that fight and its metrics, what revenue it generated, was Canelo Alvarez and Canelo Alvarez alone. So it's safe to say that because he always puts up the kind of numbers he puts up, whoever don't like him and what he's doing, they're in the minority. Since the majority of the paying public seems to be on his side. No matter how many guys you find on social media trying to poo-poo all over this fight and poo-poo all over Dimitri Bivol. Dimitri Bivol, who stated, "This is a very important fight for me, especially because I'm fighting one of the best, if not the best, in the world right now. I want people to be able to see me and my skills. This is a big fight that can give me the ability to achieve other goals and go on if I win this fight." For the most part, Canelo Alvarez's fans seem to be happy with the fight. And I told you, long before Canelo Alvarez landed on Dimitri Bivol, I told you right here on this channel, for my money, the Dimitri Bivol fight is the more difficult fight and the more interesting fight because he presents a more challenging style than the very straightforward David Benavidez or the very basic Jermall Charlo. How many times have we had that conversation? He's a full-fledged light heavyweight champion, unbeaten in his prime, battle-tested at a higher weight than those boys, confident and taking this fight for the right reasons. If I do say so myself, I get the sense that Dimitri Bivol wants this fight for more than just the payday associated with it. He actually likes his chances. I remember not that long ago there were people out there saying Eddie Hearn hasn't done right by Bivol. It wasn't that long ago that there were people running around saying Eddie Hearn's not doing a good job of promoting that guy. Yet because he's with Eddie Hearn and because Eddie has such a good relationship with Canelo, here we are. Dimitri Bivol got the fight that everybody seems to want from 160 to 168 to 175.
I mean, rest assured, it is Canelo Alvarez that is in charge.
He's the one in the driver's seat. He's the one deciding who he wants to fight. He can't be coaxed into making any decisions that he doesn't want to make. But because he's got such a good rapport with Eddie, and because Dimitri Bivol just so happens to be one of Eddie's fighters, that made all of this possible.
And it's a full-fledged light heavyweight contest.
And there are no catch weights or weight stipulations, rehydration clauses. It's a full-fledged light heavyweight contest. I find it necessary to remind you all of this because there are those out there that might want you to believe
that Canelo Alvarez is draining Dimitri Bivol.
That's not the case. The Boo Birds need something to hang on to, and if nothing else, they'll hang on to their own tribalism.
Canelo Alvarez's critics who are desperate to find fault with this fight.
Find fault with it any way they can. A Twitter user that goes by the name 12am Lifestyle stated, 6 years, no black or Latino fighters. Soon to 2023, Triple G4 or Yildirim 2. Russian fights dried up. He will fight Fielding or Smith again. It seems that Mr. 12am is implying that Canelo Alvarez has to meet a certain annual quota of black and Latino fighters to satisfy him. Him as an individual, him as a boxing fan, because it appears in his own mind that's what determines who the good fighters are and who the good fighters aren't. The color of their skin and where they hail from.
It hasn't been 6 years since Canelo fought Danny Jacobs.
Yeah, I know it hasn't. That was only 3 years ago, but you can't let little things like facts get in the way of a good narrative, the way Mr. 12am likes to cook up good narratives. Good narratives that seem to indicate that unless Canelo Alvarez is fighting fighters of a certain race from a certain place, he's not fighting the good fighters. I mean, that's the story this guy wants to run with. The truth is a lot more mundane. The truth itself is a lot more simple. Canelo Alvarez is fighting the champions. He's fighting the guys that have got the belts. He fought every man with the belt at 168 pounds. And what ruffles Mr. 12am's feathers is that none of those guys were the same race as him.
Oh, Canelo's only supposed to fight black and Latino fighters?
Well, Canelo Alvarez did fight reigning IBF champion Daniel Jacobs. Doesn't he count? Statistically, Canelo Alvarez has fought more black American champions at middleweight than Jermall Charlo has.
Stop me when I tell a lie.
What black and Latino fighters held world titles at super middleweight at the time that Canelo Alvarez went on his undisputed campaign? At that time, what black and Latino fighters held belts at 168 pounds?
Oh, so he shouldn't have tried to go for all the belts at that weight.
You see, there are guys out there like 12am Lifestyle who feel that because those fighters, those champions that Canelo Alvarez faced en route to becoming the super middleweight division's undisputed champion, there are guys who feel that because those fighters didn't fit a certain mold, that they weren't good fighters, thus making his undisputed run unimpressive and easy to do. But if it were so easy to do, then why didn't David Benavidez do it before Canelo? He was actually there before Canelo, and he had a world title.
What, it's Canelo's fault he blew the weight and lost his title on the scales?
David Benavidez first became world champion at that weight about 4 or 5 years ago. And upon becoming champion, what attempts did he make to unify this division that is so easy to unify?
He won the vacant WBC title in September of 2017.
And he's been at that weight through 2 cycles of world champions, 2 cycles of world titleists. And at no point did David Benavidez unify or attempt to unify this division. So if it were so easy to do, why didn't David Benavidez do it? He had a head start.
Well, it's because it's not easy to do, and guys like 12am are full of shit.
Canelo Alvarez is making history. History for himself, his own legacy, his own country, his own career. That's what he's doing, more so than the fighters that 12am supports. And if 12am doesn't support him, it doesn't matter, because more people support Canelo Alvarez.
If doing what Canelo's doing is so easy to do, then why isn't Jermall Charlo doing it?
Why didn't David Benavidez? He was a champion at super middleweight first. If unifying that division were so simple and easy to do, then why didn't he do it?
That would have improved his chances of landing a Canelo Alvarez fight.
These narratives never hold up to close scrutiny, and that's why most of the paying public is on Canelo Alvarez's side. The Dimitri Bivol fight is a better and more challenging fight than, say, a Jermall Charlo fight is, or a David Benavidez fight, because Dimitri Bivol is a full-fledged light heavyweight champion, and that's logic, folks. Basic logic.
Something a lot of these guys don't have.
The fuck told you Canelo Alvarez has to only fight specific fighters of a specific denomination to satisfy pricks like you?
He's doing just fine without you.
Just in keeping with the theme of news at or around these weights, Jose Benavidez Sr., the father of David Benavidez, he stated he's working on closing a deal with Caleb Plant for a September fight. First fight, May 21st, against David Lemieux, then Caleb Plant in September.
Oh, so now that Canelo's knocked him out, now you want to fight him?
Look, I'll be honest with you. They're a day late and a dollar short with this news. They're a day late and a dollar short with this fight and here's why.
I asked you, did you watch Caleb Plant last week?
Yes, I watch it.
And tell us your thoughts on the Caleb Plant performance.
I'll be honest with you, I need to recognize that he proved me wrong. He's a great fighter.
He's a great fighter. Now, Caleb Plant just posted on his social medias that you said that David Benavidez versus Caleb Plant needs to take more time. Why?
Look, this business is for two reasons. Make money and more money. I'm pretty sure that Plant, he want more money as well as Benavidez. Carlos Plant, or David Benavidez, he need another two good fights, and then he can go to be a pay-per-view.
The obvious answer fans would say, well, we want the best fight in the best. We're tired of paying for C versus D. We want A versus A.
Well, you have two A's, no
That's
doubt.
what I mean, two A's and David Benavidez and Caleb Plant.
To see two A fighters, you need to pay.
That interview conducted by Barbershop Conversations took place on February 2020, before the pandemic shut everything down, rocked the world. At that time, both David Benavidez and Caleb Plant, the both of them, they were world champions at super middleweight. And you heard what Samson Lukowicz said. Samson Lukowicz, who promotes David Benavidez, he wanted to wait. The fight could have happened sooner than later, even behind closed doors during the pandemic. The same way the Charlo versus Rosario fight happened behind closed doors during the pandemic. On pay-per-view.
That year.
Samson didn't want to do that fight sooner than later. Samson wanted to wait, and as a result of that, David went into that Romer Angulo fight, blew the weight, lost his title on the scales. The rest is history. So when I say that they're a day late and $1 short with this fight, I think you catch my drift. I think you know what I mean. They had the chance to do this fight when it mattered the most, and they blew it. What's it mean knocking out Caleb Plant now?
They would have did what they had to do this fight in 2020.
And they had the chance. Maybe that's a fight that David Benavidez would have won, and maybe that would have saw David Benavidez becoming this division's unified WBC and IBF champion, giving Canelo Alvarez all the more reason to have to fight him.
The instead of the paying public for not fighting him.
Canelo Alvarez's critics, they might want to poo-poo all over Caleb Plant, but Samson Lukowicz, David Benavidez's promoter, he thought Caleb was a great fighter. So great, he wanted to wait to do a fight with that guy.
Missed opportunity.
An opportunity that Canelo Alvarez jumped all over as soon as it became available to him. They allowed Canelo to beat them to the punch, and now what?
What?
Beating Caleb Plant after Canelo knocks him out. It's supposed to mean something.
I'm not telling you Caleb's a bad fighter or that he has to retire.
I'm telling you, beating him now don't mean what it meant before, because before he was an unbeaten champion in his prime with a belt for you to win, and you blew it.
Promoter, I should say.
Canelo's spoken for his next two fights. So is David Benavidez. Supposed to be fighting David Lemieux in May, then Caleb Plant in September. Will Caleb squeeze in a tune-up fight, a rebound fight, in between now and September? I don't know.
I just know beating him now don't mean what it meant before.
And that I do know.